So again, my name is Andrea Calderon, board president. We've got some other board members. Miriam Hicks on the line is the vice uh, president for the board. Rania Aaron Foyt will be joining us later on. She's our treasurer. And then we have some new folks on the board, which we'd like to welcome very quickly. China Osborne, who's a redevelopment project manager, will be serving as secretary. Melissa Antiveros, I'm sorry, Melissa, will be joining us as a member at large or for the board, and she's the director of Thriving Families at Community Action Agency of Southern New Mexico. And then we also have John Lewis from Habitat for Humanity, who will also be joining us as a member at large. If folks could please make sure to mute yourselves. I'm just going to go ahead and there we go. That would be great. And then we've got some great speakers on board. Secretary of Workforce Solutions, Sarita Nair, who will be discussing the transition of the Office of Housing underneath Workforce Solutions. And then we've got Brian Duboff from the Mortgage Finance Authority, who will be joining us to talk about the Opportunity Enterprise Fund. And I'm so sorry, Brian is the Managing Director of Community and Economic Development at the New Mexico Finance Authority. And so love to welcome him back for another meeting. And then Joseph Montoya, the Deputy Director of Health, Housing, and Homelessness. Welcome back, Joseph. Thank you all again. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Sarita. I know we're on a little bit of a limited time span. If folks could please, thank you for those that have already started, drop their introductions and their contact info if you would so like into the chat, and we'll be collecting questions as we move along. We're going to have sort of a format in which the speakers will have an opportunity to speak, and then we'll have a question and answer section after each one. For folks whose questions we cannot get to, we'll follow up with our speakers via email, and then we'll report back in an email to everyone with those questions and answers. Okay. Thank you all so much. And without further ado, Sarita, I will pass it off to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Andrea. Hi, everybody. It's good to be here. Good to see lots of friends, old and new, and some folks that are on my list to meet with soon. So happy to be here, and thanks for inviting me. So as you probably read, the Office of Housing is right now moving under the Department of Workforce Solutions. I think, the overall strategy here is for us to really, I'm thinking of it as incubating the office and just providing a little more structure. It was sort of hanging out between the governor's office and the Department of Finance and Administration, and there wasn't a lot of infrastructure there to support the work of the office. And so we have a, full-fledged department with a building and, all those good things that help a new agency kind of be successful. And so that is sort of first and foremost why it's moved to Workforce Solutions. But that said, there are many, or at least a few departments of labor in other states where housing and workforce do coincide, and that's includes Utah has their version of MFA within their department that is equivalent to Workforce Solutions. So it's not unheard of, and it may be the permanent home of this office. Also, there are so many links between workforce and housing, both on the side of, that being a challenge for many employers, many communities. How, do we have the housing that fits the profile of what our workforce is earning? And then all the way to the other side of, do we have the workforce to build the housing that we know we need? And are we connected enough with the trades, and are we training residential tradespeople enough of them that we can support the significant investment that the legislature and the governor have made in housing over the past few years? So it's not maybe as weird as it sounded at first. And then, of course, most of you know, I did come from local government, so not a stranger to housing, although I know less than probably every single one of you, but know enough to hopefully ask good questions. And so that is really what I hope to do. I'm at Gallup Economic Development Week and about to speak, so I can't spend a lot of time with you today, but would love to get an opportunity to sit in more of a listening role next time or at a future date so that I can really hear what all is on your minds and what you think are the appropriate roles for the Office of Housing. So first and foremost, it's designing that what the Office of Housing should be at the state level. A couple of things we know is that the state, the legislature, and the governor have invested significant amounts of money in housing, affordable housing, and homelessness support over the past few years, but it's very disconnected. The capital projects don't really talk to the general fund money. The general fund money is kind of a new thing. And then, we don't have a lot of coordination, making sure that we're fully funding projects. And that includes our work with local government. So that's a big part of what we see this office doing. The second is with regard to especially services for our unsheltered neighbors. Those exist I've got 10 departments and counting. So there's stuff in vets, there's stuff in workforce solutions, there are programs, of course, in healthcare authority and Department of Health, aging and long-term services, all the tribal housing money goes through the Indian Affairs Department. So we got to get our act together within the executive to make sure that we're coordinating those programs and those investments as well. And then there's a piece that is around, I think, strategy and understanding best practices and making sure we're pushing those out. The major metros have got a lot of have made a lot of progress in this area, but some of our smaller rural communities where housing and homelessness are still a challenge are don't have the resources to sometimes even develop the policies, let alone collect the data and all that stuff that I know you're very familiar with. So, right now, those are what I'm thinking of as the three main pillars of this office. And then especially for this year, again, I think I saw Claire on here. The legislature made a very significant investment in housing of general fund dollars, and they have to be gone by June 30th. 2026. There's quite a bit of housing money, I think close to 120 million in various pots for housing and homelessness that need to be spent in the next 14 months. So what my parting message will be is I would love to hear from you if we haven't already talked about the projects that you think are important or in your community, the gaps that we need to meet. To the extent we're putting out some RFPs, I want to make sure that we're hitting the issues that everyone thinks are the most critical. And just look forward to continuing the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarita. If folks have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or drop them in the chat. We have a couple of questions that are already on board, and we have one question around foreclosure prevention dollars, and if we have any funds specifically allocated for that to prevent or to increase housing stabilization for residents.
Yeah, there are some little pots of money still around, and our friends at MFA probably can speak to some of that. But I do think from where I sat at the city during the pandemic, those ERAP programs, emergency rental assistance programs, the rapid rehousing programs, and then eviction prevention, they were all hugely successful. And so I do think there is room to not only devote some of the one-time money to that, but really think about how we incorporate those into the permanent landscape of what we're doing here in New Mexico, because it's like everything, right? An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure, and we need to kind of get ahead of the ball on this issue. So whoever asked that, let's talk, and let's talk about what we want to not just do this year, but what we want to advocate for in the long term.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sarita, could you talk a little bit about what your organizational or what your interest is in organizing municipalities as you support them in moving through this work? We know we have a lot of different size communities all over New Mexico, and just curious as to how we'll be not only supporting them as we're getting some of the funding out the door, but also what it means, what sort of we're really encouraging around affordable housing. And so I guess it's a twofold question, both how we're going to be dealing with municipalities at different scales, and then also including affordable housing, either requirements or certain initiatives to ensure that those that have the greatest need for or are at sort of the greatest, I guess, um, vulnerability, have the most access or are able to access housing that works for them.
Yeah, that's a big question. I do have a local government bias in the sense that I do think local governments know what they need. They're on the ground. And so there's a level of expertise there that I don't think the state should try to replicate or replace. There's just, that's always going to be the case, where the local government is the closest to the community. That said, one of the things we want to do with the big pot, the 110 million for housing and related projects, is to create a cohort of the people who receive those grants, so that to me is the way to start sort of building that network, that is maybe really focused on the practical. And so we can start to see what emerges in terms of common challenges versus things that are unique to maybe urban communities versus things that are unique to a specific community, and sharing best practices in that way as well. And then, data was sort of at the forefront of the original mission of the housing office, I think, in one of the previous iterations, but I am cognizant of the fact that a lot of communities don't have the capacity to build the data infrastructure that we would need to collect data to build that statewide picture. So I think, there's a role there for either supporting requests for funding, or coming up with maybe a centralized product that folks could buy into. And I think especially in the world of housing vouchers, there's some good possibilities for connectivity with some of the aligned case management and closed loop referral systems that the state is rolling out through the Healthcare Authority and some of the other agencies. So, we all sure believe in sort of the no wrong door approach. And that includes no wrong door for housing, right? So you should be able to walk into your community school and get access to housing resources. You should be able to walk into your America's Job Center and get access to housing resources. So I think that is the level of connectivity that the state can be helpful in creating, without, sort of trampling on what we know the local communities are trying to accomplish.
Great. Thank you so much for that. Am I seeing anyone? I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and turn on. Okay, Miriam, I see your hand up. Go right ahead.
Hi, Sarita. We've got a number of developers on this call, which I'm excited to see all of you. Thank you for being here today. A lot of us are very interested in participating in helping structure however the state money goes out for affordable housing development, and including our for-profit partners. We've got such a housing crisis that we really need to get a lot of projects off the ground. But like you mentioned, the labor shortage is very much affecting our construction costs. And so a comprehensive kind of approach seems like a great idea. And yet you've got 14 months to get money out the door. So what are you thinking about in terms of creating, utilizing the resources and the knowledge that we have as a community to kind of help you achieve those goals and get kind of a balanced approach to how this money is put out for projects?
Yeah, all great questions. I mean, right now I'm doing a lot of just sort of one-on-one meetings, and I think we have one coming up, and I've had a number with the folks who are on here. But I do think ultimately this office would be well served by sort of a council or a few working groups that would continuously advise on issues like that. On the workforce side, we have already been working on this stuff in that part of the department, and So we're working on developing some apprenticeships and pre-apprenticeships that are specific to residential construction, because as we know, most of the trades programs are geared towards commercial construction. And then I've also been hearing about a shortage of inspectors being sometimes the long pole in the tent for projects, and then you finish something and then you're waiting, and it's not because people aren't trying, it's because there just aren't enough inspectors. So certainly want to hear your thoughts on where those programs need to be focused on the workforce side of the house as well.
Great, thank you. And then I see Mel, your hand up, and we've got Terry Schlater after that. And Sarita,
Nice.
how's your timing doing? I know I won't.
I'm good. I'm good till about 12:30. I got another 10 minutes or so.
Great. Okay, thank you.
Hi, Sarita. Thank you for stepping up. I'm very grateful to have the Workforce Solutions on board. I've had wonderful relations with them, but they've been historically ridiculously under-resourced. So what can you tell us about the computer and personnel resources that DWS has available to address this program we've got?
Yeah, nice to meet you. I think you emailed me as well, and I think I saw that this morning. So I'm glad we're getting a chance to meet. This actually, the legislature has been quite generous with the funding for this office. So we have that other pot of money. As you sounds like you are familiar with Workforce Solutions, it's 90% federally funded. And so we have very little control of our budget on that side of the house, especially now. But this side is very independent in the sense that it'll be completely general fund funded, except for one grant that the office already has through DFA. And so, yes, for sure, I think we'll have the resources. And then part of the mission is by the time we get to the next budget session, so the 30-day session of the legislature next year, we can give an ask that's not just like, hey, we'd like some money to do some stuff, but like, here's exactly what we need in terms of systems, in terms of equipment, in terms of office, and then of course, personnel.
Excellent. What can you tell us about your knowledge of the scope of the problem for housing, for especially low income, essential worker type people?
Sure. I mean, as I mentioned, I've worked in this area at the local government level. I had about 5 years in the area, and I think what we're seeing in New Mexico now is issues and a lack of stock at almost every level of housing, and that's sort of reflected in the two sort of lag indicators of the 60% increase in rents and the 70% increase in home buying costs over the past, I don't know what it is, 5 or 6 years. And so, that is part of the, those are some of the sort of symptoms of the underlying shortage of housing. I think, of course, like everything, when there's a shortage of something, it's hardest for our most vulnerable and most marginalized communities to access that thing. And so, of course, those problems are felt most acutely on that end of the income spectrum. Other cities and other states have tried to do a trickle-down approach that I don't think they've been particularly happy with. So San Francisco, for example, I know sort of said, well, if we give nicer houses to the rich people, they'll move out of the middle income houses and then everybody will move up. And like, I think we already know in New Mexico that doesn't really work, but we also don't have to relearn those lessons. And so we've got to make sure that we've got housing not only for people of different income levels, but of different, abilities to maintain in different environments. So having enough supportive housing and then having enough housing vouchers to put people in that supportive housing, having flexible housing options like some of the cool prefab stuff that's coming up now. We've heard from folks who are doing things like building out the grid in rural parts of the state. Like, we need housing, but like not forever. So how do we meet those kinds of needs of the workforce? And then single room occupancy, some of these ideas that we used to do really well with in America that somehow fell apart, and making sure that we have the regulatory landscape to bring them back, and then also making those investments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Melvin.
Okay, Terry, go right ahead.
Yeah, hi, sir. Hi, everybody. My question is about the no wrong door approach, and making sure that all of our entry points have the capacity and the infrastructure to serve the need, especially if we're going to try to make the housing vouchers work. Back when the Affordable Care Act passed and we were working on Medicaid expansion, we intentionally changed that phrase, no wrong door, to every right door. And that forced the structures to pivot and fund community health workers, for example. So I'm wondering if that sounds like something you all can do, and if you think it would help fund every entry point that could possibly be there with, peer health navigators, community health workers. People just don't know what they don't know. And at the gateway receiving area, we saw so many, 100% of our cases were preventable. Let's just put it that way. We had people who didn't know what unemployment insurance was. They were homeless because they lost their job and they thought they had no recourse. Crazy stuff. And of course, the substance use, misuse issues, and the serious mental illness. But how do we make our systems build capacity for peer workers and navigators?
Yeah, Terry, that's a great question. And I like the reframe from no wrong door to every door is right. And I know I've heard Kathy McGill and probably others say everything everywhere all at once, in terms of making our resources available to folks. I think that's another good one. I agree. I mean, we at the Workforce Solutions we got a grant to train social service providers. If you haven't been to one of our trainings, please, and you're in that category, let us know. We'd love to have you at the next one. But training social service providers to understand our services for exactly the reasons that you talked about. And so I do think that that's a big piece of it. And also in terms of staffing these facilities. So we know that, it used to be in a sort of supportive housing environment, you might see a lot of security personnel. And we know that now we tend to want to see more peer support workers and people with lived experience who are maintaining that positive environment in those spaces, even in a crisis triage type centers. So building out our capacity to do that is definitely important. It's something that we worked on when I was at the city as well. So I'm basically just agreeing with you, but I think this really points to that coordination piece, right? So community health workers are trained, and peer support training comes out of the Department of Health. Some of the funding for things like navigators, which every MCO is supposed to have for the unsheltered population, that's coming through the Healthcare Authority. And then we have specialists in places like the Vets Department who are working on those issues. So I really see the power of this office being braiding together those funding streams in a way that we're reaching more people. And then also that place for you all as community to say, here's what we see we need, and us to have that conversation.
Thank you so much, Sarita. We have some folks in the chat that would love to follow up with you and your
Yes,
team.
I'm gonna put those of you who know me from the city know that I cannot be trusted with my own calendar. I almost messed this up. That's why I'm like here in Gallup and on the Teams meeting. So please let Evan Sanchez know. If you email him in the next couple days, he is off taking care of some family members for the rest of this week. And I am scheduling sort of into June and July, but also the more times we can meet together in groups, I'm always open to that. And then, we are still hiring for this department. So eventually you'll get someone who's not me, who will not know a lot more than I do. And that'll be another chance to connect. But Evan, I put Evan's email. That's the best way to get him. And I put it in the chat. And if you maybe I could prevail on you, Andrea, if people put that request in the chat, just let me know and we'll have Evan follow up with them.
Certainly. Thank you so much for your time, Sarita, especially while you're in Gallup and on the move. Really appreciate your ability to join us and your willingness to discuss directly with our members some of the questions that folks had, and then also your plans for the office. Um, I would encourage everyone that's on the call to please consider becoming a member. We really love being able to showcase the work that not only is happening across our shifting landscape of governance, but also within different organizations around the state. As members, we really seek to continue. We anticipate providing you the benefit of additional information, some transparent and closer, more intimate one-on-one conversations with folks in the coming year, as well as participating in working groups that we'll be developing this summer. And so please consider joining. We have our you can actually join very quickly on our website. We've got different listings and actually have made the price for individuals a lot less expensive than organizations. If you could get your organization on board, that would be really helpful. The majority of our budget is actually financed through our memberships. So after that plug, I want to thank you again, Sarita, for joining us. Really appreciate your time. And yeah, have a great rest of your time in Gallup.
Thanks.
Wonderful.
Good to see you all. Thanks for your time. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you. All right, great. So we'll go ahead and move things along to Brian. Brian Tuba from NMFA will be speaking about the Opportunity Enterprise Fund. And so, Brian, we had you on here a couple of months ago to talk about, as the fund was launching, and just wanted to do a check-in about how things have gone and sort of what the rollout has looked like across the state. So I'll go ahead and pass it off to you to provide an update on that fund.
Great. So thank you for having me back. I'm prepared today to kind of repeat our presentation, which is pretty brief, but because we operate as a bank, I have a legal and a marketing department behind me that have asked me to sort of like present information in a particular way, but then I'll be happy to answer some questions and open it up. So just bear with me while I kind of get through my notes and presentation, and then we'll try to make it a little more casual. Okay. Do you want to put my presentation on the screen, or do you want me to share my screen? How would you like to do this?
Yeah, if you'd like to share your screen, you should have access, and then let me make sure that you do, and then that way you can drive your presentation as you'd like.
All right. I'm used to Teams, so just bear with me here. Where do I
think so? If you go down, my screen is a little bit, there should be a share button at the bottom.
Oh, there it is.
Great.
Okay. Great. All right. So I appreciate you bearing with me while I get through this. I will just say to begin that the New Mexico Finance Authority is not the New Mexico Mortgage Finance Authority, which has now changed its name because of decades of confusion between the two programs. So I'm not with the mortgage group. And the loan that I'm talking about today is a loan program that was developed out of some legislation that was done a few years ago called Opportunity Enterprise. That was initially done as a commercial loan program for commercial development. And then about 2 years ago, they added housing into the mix. And so this is for housing developers rather than individual homeowners. Okay, so just trying to get the context correct here, okay? The Opportunity Enterprise Act was created. The Opportunity Enterprise Review Board and Opportunity Enterprise Revolving Fund in 2022. The act was expanded in 2024, as I just said, becoming the Opportunity Enterprise and Housing Development Act. The law established that the Opportunity Enterprise and Housing Development Review Board will review, prioritize, and recommend potential enterprise projects to NMFA for financing. The Opportunity Enterprise programs consist of the Commercial Development Program and the Housing Development Program. Our next round for both programs is going to open up on July 1st. The application will then close on August 15th. And we have it broken down into a part one and a part two. The part one is intended to determine eligibility, in particular with a focus on what we call our but-for test, which means this project will not go forward but for the loan available through NMFA. And that's the way the majority of our programs run. So instead of asking people to do a full application up front, this kind of reduces needless work for projects that are not eligible for the Opportunity Enterprise Program, okay? What is the OE Housing Development Program? The Opportunity Enterprise Program provides low-cost financing in the form of loans for the development of workforce housing and infrastructure for affordable housing in New Mexico. Who is eligible to apply? Both for-profit and nonprofit entities are eligible. Developers must be engaged in a project that increases the supply of attainable housing to help address the housing crisis. As I mentioned, the next round is going to open up July 1st. All applications will be reviewed and scored after the round closes on August 15th. The financing is not allocated first come, first serve. And I'll talk about this a little bit more later, but basically we have a ranking system. There are 5 professionals who review every single application. They rank them. We meet together and make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of the scoring, make sure that there's not outliers. And those ranked programs or projects are then presented to our board. And if you score 60 and above and are ready to proceed with your project, it gets prioritized and put into our underwriting process. So a little bit of insight into the longer term process of you get through the application and how do you become eligible. There's approximately $93 million are still available for the Housing Development Program from the initial $125 million fund. Subsequent rounds will be held if funds remain after this round. A maximum of 25% or $31.25 million is available per county. Bernalillo County still has $23.6 million available, and Sandoval County has the full amount, 31.25. I'll give you a little bit of insight. From our round one, we have one project that made it through underwriting and is getting close to closing. And then from round two, it looks like we're going to have 2 projects that successfully made it through underwriting. So this is after the scoring and the application, got to get through underwriting. So right now it looks like we have 3 projects that will be closing in short order. And hopefully as we get more rounds under our belt, our processes will become a little bit more efficient and effective, and we'll be just going through all the applications as quickly as possible and getting more money out to the state. All applicants must articulate why other means of financing their projects are unavailable or insufficient in the application. And that goes back to what I mentioned before, is our but-for test in the step one. The Opportunity Enterprise Housing Development Program is targeted at developers with housing projects in New Mexico that will increase the supply of attainable housing, both rental and for sale, and create infrastructure for affordable housing. The maximum loan amount for housing is $15 million. There's no minimum. The interest rate is fixed at 60% of the Wall Street Prime Journal rate at the time of the closing, but no less than 3% interest rate. If federal funds are part of the financing of an affordable housing project, the interest rate will be lower of 3% and the federal funds rate. No application fees. The loan may be paid off in advance with no penalty. We do all the typical credit check, equity, collateral, personal guarantees, and there's a 10% minimum owner's equity requirement. The application consists of two parts. Part one is the initial screening. Part two is the full application. Part one will determine whether other means of financing a project are unavailable or insufficient, so that there's a gap. This requirement is in the statute. Part one will be due before the full application. Applicants will be given access to the rest of the application after they are determined to be eligible based on the part one. Submitted applications for eligible projects are scored and ranked according to the criteria in the evaluation and prioritization policies that can be found on our website. So you can see exactly how we're scoring it and what points are available. The Opportunity Enterprise and Housing Development Review Board will prioritize and recommend projects to NMFA for financing. Projects recommended to the NMFA will be underwritten by NMFA in order of priority. Projects recommended to NMFA will be reviewed to assess the applicant's ability to repay the loan and will be underwritten according to NMFA policies in order of prioritization. Housing development applications will be evaluated and prioritized based on the following criteria. Community need and alignment. I'm not going to read every single word here, but the community need and alignment is our biggest category. Fund efficiency, applicant need and readiness, and supportive land use practices. And the numbers that you see here, the points that you see here, they are as of the January policies that were updated. We are considering doing some small updates to the policies again to make some improvements. And so the points may be changing a little bit. So what I would say is keep your eyes on our website over the next few weeks for June updated policies and scoring. I have a feeling that applicant need and readiness is going to be up to 20 points, and we're pulling some points from some other places. Okay, so don't hold us to these numbers. We're trying to make them better. The OEHD program is designed to increase the supply of attainable housing, workforce, and affordable based on the needs of the community in which the project is located. At least 30% of the fund must be dedicated to projects in rural communities. The evaluation and prioritization policy allocates 5 points to projects in rural communities to help this requirement. There will be likely no perfect score, perfect being 100 points on the evaluation criteria. Projects in urban areas may score higher than rural projects on criteria related to proximity to public transportation, revitalization, zoning reforms, and other. The evaluation and prioritization policy was created to ensure that community need and support, fund efficiency, how the funds are leveraged and used, project need and readiness, and supportive land use practices were incorporated into the evaluation of project applications. So more information is available at our website, and I can just kind of quickly show you that website, but here's the link, or just go to nmfinance.com and you can navigate to it. The OE Housing Development Evaluation and Prioritization Policy is posted at this website. New applicants will have to create an account through our Salesforce portal. Applicant portal is on the website, so you'll be able to just create your account or log into your account and submit your application. And all information can be found by just simply going to NM Finance, as I said already. Let me just quickly show you the website here. There's information, there's a ton of information here. So I'm going to kind of implore you that if you're interested in applying, spend some time on this website. Most of your questions will be answered by reviewing all the detailed information here. You can review our policies and procedures with the scoring guidelines. You can review House Bill 195 down here, so you can see the enacting legislation. There are all these FAQs here, so if you want to know about loan terms, here are the loan terms. If you want to know about loan amounts, here they are. So we've really tried to make this complete to be able to answer all of your questions. And we're happy to get questions directly, but this is the place to start to learn about the program and all the legislative details that we are simply implementing. Okay, that's probably enough of the presentation. So I'm going to stop sharing so I can see you all, and hopefully I can start to answer some questions for you.
Great. Thank you so much, Brian. Really appreciate that update. We've got a couple of questions in the chat, and then Mel, I'll pass it off to you after that. The first one that I'm seeing is, do you have many unused funds ever? If so, what's the approximate percentage, especially for Bernalillo County?
So as I said in the presentation, I'm going to just kind of go back here to that screen. There is a significant amount of money still available for Bernalillo County because we've only been through 2 rounds and we've only approved two loans. I'm sorry, 3 loans seem to have gotten through. Let me just go back here. Looks like there's about $23.6 million available for Bernalillo right now. It's a little bit of a moving target because once a project gets prioritized, they score 60 points, get through our OE board, they're considered prioritized. So now we've put that money aside, and we've encumbered that money. So that's encumbered dollars. Once a loan gets through underwriting and gets approved, now that money has been dispersed. So as money is encumbered and projects are going through underwriting, we're holding back funds. But my guess is that over the next couple of rounds, we will have dispersed certainly all the money for Albuquerque, Bernalillo, Sandoval County, and be able to start to focus more on the outlying areas and some of the more rural areas as well. all this money will definitely be, we're getting applications, and some of them are very good applications. And so the money will certainly be spent, deployed.
Gotcha. Thank you so much, Brian. I see another question in the chat, and it has to do with, let me just see if I can find it. How do you define attainable housing?
So that definition is in our policies and procedures. And attainable is going to really be dependent by county. So, every county has different housing values, different income levels. And so it's going to be determined in underwriting with some individual calculations based on where each project is located. So I can't give you a dollar amount statewide because we're not doing it that way.
Gotcha. Thank you. Okay, so we've got two folks, Mel and then Roger, messaged me. If folks are having issues raising their hands, I noted that there are a few, I'm not sure if everyone has access. You should have access to raise your hand through the React button, but if you're having some issues, just feel free to just message me. But I'll go ahead and pass it off to Mel.
Thank you, Brian, for stepping into the quagmire. I've got some questions.
Thank you, Mel, for the couple of emails this morning.
Bless you. Glad you got them. Thank you. So, as far as the HB 195, there are a lot of definitions in there. One of them that I'm interested in is what affordable housing infrastructure. We talk about affordable housing infrastructure programs. What are examples of affordable housing infrastructure?
So we've worked really carefully with the Housing New Mexico, the Mortgage Finance Authority, to make sure that our projects are not conflicting or stepping on their projects. And so it was determined that any projects that are affordable housing, which has a federal definition to it, that we would not be competing with them or other developers for vertical above ground construction. So that means that if there's a project for affordable housing that needs sewer lines, electrical, all that infrastructure that goes into the project prior to building vertically, we will come in and do that funding. So you can apply for water, electrical, all the utility connections. We can finance that piece of it. And then if it's workforce housing, we can do the vertical on that.
Excellent, thank you. So in terms of workforce housing, we've been talking about that a long time. We have, the housing crisis increasing over time. Right now, people are talking like workforce housing is for first responders and teachers. What are we going to do for essential workers? What are counties doing in terms of what they're telling you as opposed to these two groups? What's going on? What can you tell us?
Not a lot. This program was created by some state legislators to make funds available statewide based on community and really developer need. So if a developer wants to do a project that conforms to this program, they can apply from anywhere in the state. And so we're not judging or determining, and we didn't write this legislation. This was written and we're just simply implementing to get these funds spread out. And so when you start to ask about a specific thing for a specific county, for a specific group of workers, I think it's beyond the scope of our administration of this loan program. I'm sorry to say. It's a great question, and there is need. I'm not denying it, but it's just not something that got calculated into what we're doing with this fund.
Great. Well, thank you. I understand. I'm going to have to go to my politicians if I want an answer to that question. That's cool.
Another door, let's say, since we were talking about doors before.
Okay, thank you, Mel, and thank you, Brian. We've got a question from Roger Valdez and then Virgil Looney.
Hey, Brian, thank you. One, I guess it's a question A and B parts. Can you, and has anyone combined your financing with financing from from MFA, from Housing New Mexico for a project? And then the other question is, I tried to track down an answer to this and didn't get too far during the session, but if we have capital outlay for a project, that the capital outlay cannot be used to buy down debt. So if there was some financing from NMFA in the project, and that capital outlay couldn't be used to offset that debt, if that makes any sense. And I don't know if there's an answer to that or if it's up in the air.
Some great questions. I'll do my best. Bear with me, please. So specifically as to whether or not any of our funds have been combined with the Mortgage Finance Authority's programs, I can't say because we haven't closed on these loans yet. What I would say is that our intention is to not be the sole lender, and we encourage projects that have leverage with other financing. That's part of the scoring, actually. So projects that are really like, we want to fill in the gap on financing rather than be the sole lender. So yeah, we encourage that, and we'd be happy to work with any other lender. As for the second part, in terms of I'm sorry, would you repeat the second part of that question? Because that gets a little bit more complicated.
So capital outlay. So for example, you've got capital outlay in the project, and because I spoke with one of your colleagues before, and it's sort of if we went with financing, but then received capital outlay and using the capital outlay to retire the debt or to lower the debt that is on the project.
Right. So the program is intended to not be refinancing of existing projects. This is to create new housing rather than refinance. We have a lot of other loan programs that may be beneficial and could be used in combination. We're just about to stand up 2 new programs with SSBCI. These are federal programs that we're getting some money on. One is a capital assistance program where we will be doing loan guarantees directly to banks. The other is a direct loan participation program. Both SSBCI, they're going to be opening up this summer, and so they might be something that could be used for that. I can't say right now. We have PPRF, which sometimes can be applicable for this kind of program. We have new market tax credits. So I guess I would encourage you to spend a little bit of time on our website and see what other loan programs could be used in combination with Opportunity Enterprise.
Okay, great. Thank you, Brian, and thank you, Roger. We'll move on to Virgil and Zoe, and then we'll wrap up questions at that point and move on to Director Montoya. Thank you. Go ahead, Virgil.
Hi, Brian. Thanks so much for this information. And I think this is a quick one. So for the workforce housing where y'all can go vertical with the financing, can folks also do the infrastructure, use the funding for infrastructure development for the workforce as well, or is it only on the workforce side, only the vertical development?
Yeah, so that's just something you would negotiate with the underwriting team as to the exact use of proceeds. But I don't see any reason why it couldn't be done to do infrastructure for workforce housing projects.
Thank you.
And Zoe, would you like to go ahead with your question?
Yeah, I have two parts. This is maybe an obvious one, but I was curious if there's any, it's just a one-time funding and it's not going to be renewed. You're just going to use it up and then they're going to have to go through, legislation all over again. That's my first question. My second one is it seems like the commercial and the housing are two separate programs. Do you work with multi-use or do those overlap? I mean, for more creative, yeah, those sort of developments.
Great, thank you. Some great questions, actually. I guess what I can tell you what has happened in the past. I can't tell you what's going to happen in the future. But the commercial opportunity enterprise, which is the original legislation, that did get refunded. And when it got refunded, that's when they incorporated housing into the legislation as well. So it's not unheard of to have additional funding put into programs. I guess a lot's going to depend on the economy and all these things that are kind of up in the air right now at a federal level.
Okay, great. And actually,
The
sorry,
two,
go ahead, Brian.
yeah, the two programs really, the application process is separate, but they can be, you can apply in combination. So you can apply for housing and commercial. And in fact, we've had somebody do that recently for a project in Santa Fe. And so that kind of mixed use is fine, but they really are separate applications, separate loans. And what I would say is that with each individual program, you can only get one loan every 12 months.
Sure.
But we're trying to make sure that restriction doesn't apply for a mixed use project for the two separate programs.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks so much, Brian, for coming back to us and bringing this information. It looks like possibly there'll be a report put out at some point on this program. If there's a report put out, will it be put on your website? How will we know about it?
Yes, it will be on our website. This program is still very new, right? We just got through the applications for the second round. And so there's not a lot to report. I mean, I think you're as up to date as I can get you right now. But yeah, as loans close and as units are built and people are moving in, we'll certainly be reporting on the success of the program.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Brian. Yeah.
If I can take just one moment, because it wasn't really in our presentation, but I just want to emphasize that one of the requirements for the application is a market study. And the market study is taken very seriously as part of the application eligibility. So you've got to have a a market study that has been completed within a year of applying. So if you've got an old market study that's 10 years old, you can't dust it off and resubmit it. It's got to be up to date. There are detailed instructions about what needs to be included in the market study on our website. And that really, I'm just trying to get everyone to focus. If you're either a community or a developer, that is a very important part of the eligibility to move forward and be competitive. So make sure your market study is good.
Alrighty. Sounds like that's that's a lessons learned that we can all benefit from. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
We need to move on to our next speaker, Director Joseph Montoya with Department of HHH. Thank you again, Brian, and Joseph, please take it away.
I am going to log off, so thank you. I'm sorry I'm going to miss your presentation, Joseph.
No problem. We can get together anytime.
All right, take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Andrea, Miriam, thank you very much for inviting me. We sure appreciate the opportunity to be able to talk about some of the things that are going on and some of the activities that we have happening in Albuquerque right now. We are in close communication with the state of New Mexico. As you might know, we had two large funding things come at us, both from CIP and then also an allocation that was originally made to be able to go to the city and county collectively as a legislative appropriation. And so language changed kind of at the very end. And so we are putting proposals together and working very closely with the state of New Mexico to see if any of those proposals will be acceptable to the state currently. And so I don't want to go into a lot of detail in terms of particular proposals right now, simply because we're just freshly having some initial negotiations. I can say, though, that at least compared to last year, where we only received, I think it's $1.8 million total in terms of capital improvements monies for housing. This year, we're up to $8.5 million total for affordable housing funds. Some of those funds are specifically for developments that we already had under contract, and so that, and because they've been vetted through the Affordable Housing Act and our processes, we have the ability to be able to pass them through things like, for instance, like Sawmill and the Veteran Center receive very specific allocations. The largest sum of funds that we received is $7.3 million and some small additional funds to be used for new affordable housing development in general. The council has expressed a desire to be able to use those funds in the downtown area. And so we're going to be putting an RFP here very closely for that particular issue. We also have right now an RFI put out for land that we have available to be used for. Primarily, it'll be single family, but there's some home ownership and rental multifamily home ownership opportunities. Most of the lots are fairly low. Then we have two RFPs coming out. They're supposed to go out at the end of the week, but I was doing a last review on them, so I've got to make a few changes to some of the language. There was some unnecessary federal language in there. We were trying to make them as simple and clean as possible to put out for land that we also have that will actually come with money, so that we'll have land and financing packages for eligible entities to be able to apply for those funds. So we're very excited about a lot of things that are going on right now. We hope to have a total of 6 RFPs, possibly 7, within the next 3 months going out for a very particular kind of activities that we have allocated, assuming that we get the funds for those activities. As I mentioned already, we know that we'll be able to get the funds for the capital improvements programs funds, and so we're already working on those RFPs, and we'll put those RFPs as soon as we're actually able to get the money from DFA. And then if in fact we're able to get any funds from the state of New Mexico relative to the allocation, which we had jointly lobbied for with the county. So this was a joint effort between Bernalillo County and the city of Albuquerque in terms of really lobbying for these particular funds. And want to just put a shout out uh, uh, to Secretary Neary, who's been very good and very positive, very professional, and is asking a lot of good questions. And then also for the folks who really assisted us in trying to attending these funds. This was the largest allocation of its time for affordable housing. So Secretary Neary had mentioned previously, we're starting to see some interest from the state of New Mexico in affordable housing. This is incredibly important right now as we're seeing drastic cuts on the federal side. And as you may not know, the president's budget's getting rid of almost every single one of the housing programs. We're drastically cutting them, 44% cuts in overall administration, getting drastic cuts in terms of vouchers, complete wipe out of CPG program, the home programs. So there's very significant cuts. We were just estimating last year yesterday that we'll probably be seeing at least, that could affect us to at least 5,000 new households on the streets if those funds are enacted or provided, if the budget is funded. So there'll be drastic differences, drastic changes to our physical and mental social landscape if those funds are not appropriated. And I wanted to go really quickly because one, I know that we're a little short on time, but happy to answer any kind of questions in detail. We also have some exciting policy proposals coming up for increased amounts of funding, both on our current housing trust fund and proposals for an increase in a housing trust fund, a new housing trust fund with different sources of funds besides the bond issuance. So trying to look forward and being more proactive rather than reactive in terms of the kind of activities and not relying on necessarily kind of the political whims of the federal government or the state government. And I don't know if I want to answer anything from Rebecca. Maybe we'll see.
Okay, thank you so much, Joseph. Rebecca, I'll pop over to you, and then I think Terry, we've got a question from you in the chat that I think would be applicable to Director Montoya, and then we'll hop over to Mel. And then if folks have other things, questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and drop a question that I've got, Joseph, in there as well. Okay, Rebecca, we'll pass it off to you.
Hi, Joseph. It's been a while. Not really, but good to see you. I just wanted a clarification on the 6 RFPs that are being released in the next year. You usually release a home and a workforce housing trust fund in the summer, so I'm assuming 2 of those are that funding. Are the remaining 4 land and or money, or the remaining 4 other sources of affordable housing that we normally do not see on an annual basis?
Thank you, Rebecca. So what we won't be doing is housing trust fund money because that's only every 2 years, and we released it this year. And so it'll be one other year. Just a little information on that. We did get the full $10 million allocation on that, and then we got $2.5 million extra from the council. So we're very happy to see that the council is building up. We intend to build that up for the 2 years after that a lot higher, just to be clear. So yes, we'll have one for housing, one for multifamily housing, one for home also, and again, assuming that we receive the funds. We're also putting out these are just assumptions at this time. One for rehabilitation, also for home ownership in terms of land and buildings, just like the same that we're doing for the 2 RFPs that we're having now. And then some various other contracts. For instance, we'll have a contract as an example with the Veterans Integration Center because we have an ongoing contract with that. And then, of course, we actually received today that we will be receiving actually a little more than we received in CDBG this year. So we're going to be allocating some funds for under CDBG for housing. As you know, we'll be allocating that for infrastructure. Physical infrastructure for housing development.
Awesome. Thanks for the clarification, Joseph. I appreciate it.
Sure, thank you.
Okay, we've got a quick question in the chat, and it is from Terry. I'm trying to see if we can. The question is, if we're subsidizing developers, why are we not also able to require them to build housing to fill specific needs? And if this feels more like a Brian question or a Sarita question, we can sort of defer to them, Joseph. But it says, and how are we evaluating those developer subsidies per unmet housing needs?
I think I can answer at least a portion of that. It might not be completely satisfactory. So first of all, there's, as any person who has tried to get money from us, there's a very lengthy, very detailed kind of application process. Most of the filtering through that application process is mandatory stuff that we ask to because of the Affordable Housing Act. So the only reason we're able to provide any money to anybody besides ourselves is because of the Affordable Housing Act. And that act mandates, both in terms of a regulatory process and statutory processes, um, very specific kind of questions. When we're talking about very specific needs, I'm not sure what that means. We do, for instance, provide developers, if for as an example, senior housing. Soul Housing has done several developments recently. We see there's a great need that provided for senior housing, and also a very good example is that Soul Housing has worked with special needs population, the hearing impaired population for that. So I'm not exactly sure what that question is. There's the answer to that question, but be happy offline or to call me later, and I can provide a lot more detailed issues if that's required.
Thank you, Joseph. I'll go ahead and pass it off to Mel. And then we'll do, unless there are any other questions, we'll do a quick little wrap up, and I think we'll be, yeah, Joseph would love any parting words that you have before that.
Sure. But Melvin, I know you've got something going on, so more than happy to answer your question.
Thank you, Director Montoya. Thank you for stepping up also. So I'm a consumer, and I want to know what we can expect in terms of reporting requirements for the population at large. I'm talking about what percentage of the need that we've addressed either historically or can reasonably expect. What can you tell us quantitatively?
Sure, absolutely. So first of all, I can tell you that we're not doing a good job of addressing the absolute need that is out there, right? So I can tell you that we've put all the resources that we have that we have available to us on the streets, or will, once we have more money, we'll put it on the streets. But if you estimate any between 30,000, that we're in need of between 30,000 and 25,000 new units of housing, there's estimated that we have about between 15 at the low end and 20,000 units of need for low moderate income people. And then of course that gets subdivided in terms of other social needs of that. And our total production, although we've increased it from 1 year, we've increased our production from about 200 units to a little over 400 units in 1 year. That is minuscule relative to the need that's out there. It's it's practically nothing, right? And so there's a huge need that we're currently not meeting. Just to put this in light, the city's whole production for all building permits, affordable, not affordable, every kind of unit, is actually less than 3,000 units per year. So one of the problems that we're having is it's a supply and demand problem, that our total production of units is less than half of it was than it was even 10 years ago. So that's causing problems in terms of, that was mentioned earlier, that we really need to increase the supply. The biggest issue though, however, is that the type of housing, or the affordability of housing that the private sector can do without subsidy doesn't meet the needs of the majority of the population. So what the private sector can do without subsidy can only house 20% of the population, the highest 20% of the population. After that, 80% of the populations need some form of subsidy from their new housing to be able to provide that. And that money isn't there. Now we're making kind of, I wouldn't say incremental increases, right? So the monies that if we get the money that we've asked for and lobbied for this year, that's a 10-fold increase. That's still nothing, quite frankly, right? Compared to what it's almost, this question came up when a counselor question, it says, well, we've used we spent several $1 million in terms of workforce housing funds and bond issuance funds, and why hasn't that solved the problem? It's like we have a $100 problem, and you've provided me 50 cents, right? So even if you double it and you give me $1, so what, right? In terms of meeting the need. So I don't mean to be negative about that, but we have a long way to go in terms of ramping up our total production. And I think it's essential that the city and the political leadership recognize that we have a lot more to do. We're going to have this next year 6 openings in terms of developments that I know of right now already. And that's nice. We'll pat ourselves on the back, we'll smile, have photo ops, and we're going to be all happy and things of that nature. We need 25 of those, 30 of those to make a true difference in terms of the overall market and lowering the rents so that average people can be able to stay here, and lowering the ability to provide home ownership opportunities for folks. That doesn't include, right, especially very, very high needs and high subsidy needs for, what we call special needs populations that aren't able to, with just a little help, aren't able to sustain themselves in the marketplace.
Yeah, well, I appreciate your sincerity and your integrity. This is crazy. So what we have is a huge market failure. And personally, I don't believe that markets fail. I believe that markets are perverted. I believe that markets are distorted. And so there's a lot of political will involved in this. And we are who are on the barricades are going to have to scamper to avoid the stampede when the political will gets established based on the torches and pitchfork crowd showing up. But I really appreciate you being there. If there's anything I can do to help you, let me know. Thank you.
Sure. Well, David, I appreciate that. And to remember, it's not just about money, it's on land use. And we have very good partnerships on our planning department. And they're really trying to push an agenda, but at the end of the day, they can only do so much on to allow the political leadership to be able to provide the land use in order to be able for us to be able to subsidize it to lower the cost of housing for everybody. And so hopefully you'll be seeing some opportunities that you can support, not only changes to what we want to do is increase the amount of money going towards affordable housing, but also decrease the cost under a land use perspective to be able to support those ideas. So I appreciate that. Thank you very much for your comments.
Great. Thank you so much, Joseph. So appreciate you taking time for those questions. We have some follow-up questions that I think we can, let's see, one more question, and then I think we're ready to wrap up. Well, actually, just a quick, you said that there was going to be a real significant threat to the amount of, considering the federal funding changes. What would that mean for staff and administrative capacity that you have in order to really move the needle on some of these, just in the housing strategy in general, and then also supporting programs or any lobbying efforts, sort of all of the gap financing efforts that are and permitting, zoning, all of that.
From the federal subsidy side, it would be absolutely disastrous. So for my staff, they're all federally funded. So we would disappear. We would not exist anymore. If you look at the housing authorities, they're looking at huge significant cost. Their funding is based on how, and sometimes they have public housing and vouchers, and a percentage of that is provided to staff. There wouldn't be anybody, very few people there to be able to administer a lot. So it would be completely and totally disastrous. I probably wouldn't be here, nor, I mean, if there's no CDBG program to run, they're not going to provide any administrative staff to be able to do that. So, and then we're already seeing that on the federal level. So for right now, for instance, as an example, there is nobody in our region that is being able to administer or take in our environmental reports, right? So mandatorily, we have to do these environmental reports for everything we do if it's federally funded. And and the law hasn't changed, right? The regulations haven't changed, but there's literally nobody there to accept them or provide advice or take them, right? So we're just gonna do them and put them in the system, and we have no idea. So already we're seeing with even just current people leaving, um, that there's breakdowns in terms of our administrative capacity. That would flow down to us. If they don't provide us the funding, we don't exist. So,
And can you remind us what the timeline would be on that? Or do you know?
well, so some funding sources have already been cutting. So there's been attempts to cut COC fundings. Fair housing has already been cut significantly, right? That's a fundamental kind of baseline level. The technical assistance funds have been cut. Some of that was returned, but they're cutting major kind of contractors out. And that's already today. That's already done. There's people fighting about it. But then we're talking about the next budget cycle. And so those cuts I was talking about were President Trump's proposed budget. Uh, uh, and so, there's 8 months, right, till that, or 7 months till that process is going. But the process for the next year's budget is already going. So those are his proposed cuts.
Great. Okay. Thank you so much for that. Okay, well, we are nearly at time, and so I just wanted to thank everyone. Thank you, Director Montoya, once again for joining us. Really appreciate the consistent updates, and I think that as the federal landscape and funding situation continues to shift, we'll keep tabs on everything. Please feel free. Also, we've got a significant amount of people that are really interested in supporting funding for housing for the city and for the county as much as we can. And so please feel free to reach out to our organization for any additional support.
Thank you, we'll do. Yeah, we'll keep you informed. And one great thing that we have here, just so you know, in this area is there's a great working relationship between the city and the county. In a lot of areas I've worked, that doesn't exist, and so we really have that. And you've got really good dedicated staff and political leadership that wants to make things happen. So for that, we can count some blessings.
Great. No, that's wonderful to hear. Wonderful. Well, I just wanted to go ahead and do another shameless plug. The Affordable Housing Coalition seeks to provide as much transparency as possible, really connecting folks that are doing advocacy work, folks that are simply interested in housing, folks that are doing support services for folks with lived experience in having that are facing housing issues with government partners, with folks that are in decision-making power and positions that really have an impact on the way that money flows and processes occur here in New Mexico and in the Albuquerque metro area. And so the majority of our organization is funded by memberships. We please encourage you to follow up and join us. We're in our membership drive season. And so you will get a follow-up email with us with that link. It should be at the bottom of your email. It is also in the chat. And we'll have some notes following up, as well as announcements of some upcoming events that some of our board members, as well as our previous board member, Anita Cordova, going to give you a shameless plug here, will be participating in and speaking at. And so, in addition to that, we're going to be transitioning into a committee structure and really thinking about what that looks like for our organization. And so, please stay tuned for more conversations on that. In addition to many more fundraising opportunities that are in the pike and being developed right now. And then also we're looking forward to election season as we see that coming up. And so one of our committees, I'm just gonna maybe give a preview, might have something to do with creating housing forums around for candidates to really give us some feedback on their particular approach to that question. So sorry, my dog is chiming in. With
I
that,
just want to I want to take a minute just to thank Joseph as well. Really appreciate you having such a passion for the work. And I think many of the people on this call have seen the difference that you've made in connecting cross city departments and trying your best to get funding out to the community and get this housing built, get vouchers secured, et cetera. I know it's a mountain of worry that is on all of our shoulders as we see these cuts. And we just appreciate that you care so much about our community and you're working so hard to try to tackle that mountain. And so we appreciate it. Just want to give you a minute to just sit in that space for a little bit, given all the other challenges that you're facing. So thank you.
Great. Thank you, Miriam. And thank you, Joseph, again. Thank you all for attending, and that'll be it for this month's meeting. We will have our next large membership meeting in July. And so if you all are interested in hearing for particular speakers, please feel free to email us. Yeah, we would love to hear from you. If our conversation spurred any follow-up questions, please feel free to send those our way. And as usual, our presentations, the recordings will be listed on our website, as well as any follow-up documents from the Q&A. So thank you all